Welcome to the university and beginning or continuing your education here. My name is Valerie Richardson, and I am the Title IX Coordinator for the University of Washington. With me is Mags Alex, Deputy Title IX Coordinator. Thank you so much for watching today and taking the time to learn more about Title IX and gender equity. We would prefer to be meeting with you in person and be engaging on these important issues face-to-face. So we appreciate your attention during this new and temporary remote learning time we are in. And if you wish to talk with either of us directly or to a confidential advocate, contact information is on the last slide of this presentation. First, a bit of background. Title IX is the federal gender equity law that prohibits sex-based discrimination in federal programs. Title IX covers parity, for example, equal opportunities in college athletics, and access, protecting the right of all genders to equally access their work and learning environments, regardless of their sex or gender. Title IX is the umbrella term we often use to also include other federal laws, such as the Violence Against Women Act. These laws can be used to both protect individuals from harassment and hold those accountable who engage in harassing behavior. You may be aware that the U.S. Department of Education recently released new regulations that require universities to address certain misconduct in specific ways. We will touch on that briefly throughout today's session, but the best source of information on that topic is the FAQ section you can find on the UW Title IX website. I will also say that UW will continue to address all complaints of misconduct, regardless of where the behavior occurs, and that supportive measures and resources are available to anyone who experiences unwanted or harmful conduct, whether or not they make a complaint. Today's session focuses primarily on preventing and addressing sex-based discrimination as it pertains to sexual harassment and other forms of sexual misconduct. But it's important to note that Title IX protects access to education and educational activities in other ways as well. For example, one focus for Title IX is athletics, specifically providing for equitable participation for both men and women. Another area of focus is pregnant and parenting students and employees. Title IX ensures that folks can continue to work and study while they're pregnant and parenting, and allows for temporary accommodations for that to occur, as well as for folks to take leave as necessary. Third focus is LGBTQ. An example of that would be providing all gender bathrooms for people of all genders. It's also important to note that people with these identities experience heightened levels of harassment, and our UW policies can be of help. And then a fourth area of focus is STEM, science, technology, engineering, and medicine, and math. Enrolling, hiring, and climate historically have been and are underrepresented in these fields. And one primary reason is gender harassment. We'll talk about that difference in just a bit, the difference between gender harassment and sexual harassment. As we move into the conversation today, I want to acknowledge that each of us have different lived experiences and different lenses through which we view the world. When we discuss complex and painful issues such as sexual harassment and gender-based violence, those conversations can bring up traumatic or difficult memories or feelings. Please take care of yourself as we proceed into this discussion and step out or lean in as it feels right to you. To set the stage for our discussion, I want to highlight that UW is committed to a number of things. First, we're committed to fostering an environment where discrimination, harassment, and violence are not tolerated. We're committed to starting with compliance as the floor, but building up from there towards a culture of prevention. We're committed to addressing all forms of sexual misconduct, and we're committed to prioritizing equity and fairness.
The values that we at the University of Washington draw upon as we consider these challenges and evaluate solutions include, but are not limited to, survivor choice, specifically providing options and resources for survivors so that they can choose what is best for themselves at any specific time and given any specific situation. We also focus on community responsibility, both in terms of assessing and addressing potential physical harm to others and working together to prevent any such harm. We are guided by equity, whether in terms of due process, equitable procedures, and equitable access to education or workplace activities. And prevention is also a guiding value. We strive to prevent, stop, and remedy sexual misconduct wherever and however it occurs. Title IX prohibits discrimination based on sex. This diagram shows how assault and other sexual misconduct fits into that paradigm. In the innermost circle, you'll see that assault or other sexual misconduct, such as harassment, sexual exploitation, and stalking, create a hostile environment, the next circle. Creating a hostile environment is one form of harassment, and sexual harassment is a form of sex discrimination. Sex discrimination, which I'll talk about a bit later, is unfavorable treatment because of that person's sex.
Today we'll be covering 4 specific content areas. The first will be recognizing behaviors that are sexually harassing and that might constitute sexual misconduct. The second is UW policy as it relates to Title IX and preventing sex discrimination. Thirdly, we'll address resources and support that are available to all students, employees at the university. And fourth, we'll talk about where and how to make a formal complaint of sexual harassment or other sexual misconduct. So let's get started first with talking about some of the behaviors. Many behaviors may be considered to be sexually harassing. This includes behaviors that can be observed, such as hanging photographs or images that are sexual in nature in the workplace or in a residence hall room. It can be heard, such as comments or ongoing requests for dates. Can be felt, such as touching someone's body by kissing or grabbing them, for example. And they often utilize power dynamics, such as quid pro quo harassment, which we'll cover later. And they may occur either in person or electronically. We also note that anyone, regardless of sex, gender identity, sexual orientation, race, religion, ability, or citizenship status, may be subject to harassment and may be the person engaging in harassment. A person's gender or other identity or characteristics does not protect them from unwanted behaviors or harm, just as gender or other characteristics do not mean that they cannot be the person engaging in such behavior. When speaking of behaviors, it's important to note that tone and context are important. Something that may be okay among friends, or might have been okay among friends before these COVID times, such as a hug, may not be okay among acquaintances or between a professor and student. Impact is also highly relevant. Someone may find a particular action or statement more harmful because of their cultural background or because of previous trauma they have experienced. Also, consensual behavior among 2 people could actually create an uncomfortable environment for others. Explicit sexual jokes or touching could make those around you uncomfortable or even create a hostile environment. It doesn't violate policy to ask another student out on a date. However, if they say no, you likely don't want to ask again and again. Not all behaviors are well recognized, and not all are violations of policy. But all of these behaviors are harmful. We use a metaphor of the iceberg. It's a concept we've borrowed from the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine's report on sexual harassment. If you look at the visual on the screen now, you'll see that public consciousness is the waterline. We notice and generally agree that behavior above the waterline is unacceptable. For example, quid pro quo and sexual coercion. And those examples of those would be promising professional or academic rewards in return for sexual favors or threatening professional or academic consequences unless sexual demands are met. Sexual violence and unwanted sexual attention is also above the waterline. Most folks understand that rape, sexual assault, and unwanted groping or touching is absolutely unacceptable. However, unwanted sexual attention, sometimes referred to as the come on, is also a form of harassment and not acceptable. And this you can see is below the waterline on the left-hand side of the screen. Some examples of that behavior include things like obscene gestures, pressure for dates, and sexual teasing. Gender harassment, which is the put down, is also a form of harassment and not acceptable, also below the waterline on the right-hand side of the screen. Examples of these behaviors include things like sexist insults, offensive remarks about bodies, or name calling. By allowing the issues below the surface or below the waterline to continue unchallenged, even though they may not meet the policy or legal definition of pervasive or objectionably offensive, we are creating and maintaining a platform and conditions for the behavior above the surface to exist. All of these behaviors chill the water and allow the iceberg of exclusion and harassment to persist and to grow. We need to notice and see these behaviors as concerning. And while not everything meets the legal definitions of harassment, all of these behaviors can be addressed. A good guideline to remember is that it isn't your intent that is most important. It is the impact your behavior has on the other person that matters. If you find yourself saying things like, "I was just kidding," or "lighten up," it might be a good signal for you to reflect on your language and behavior and ask whether what you're doing or saying is offending another person, or whether what you're saying is even appropriate.
We're going to turn now to the next section of our presentation, which is about the specific policies the University of Washington has in place to address sexual harassment and other types of sexual misconduct. I'll also talk about some of the different types of behaviors that our policies prohibit. Discrimination can occur in a couple of ways. The type of discrimination that the University of Washington is able to address is that in which disparate treatment occurs. Another type of discrimination is that where a specific group of individuals is disparately impacted. An example of disparate impact is when colleges use the SAT or ACT as the basis for admitting students, as these tests favor certain groups of individuals and consequently end up disfavoring other groups of individuals. Though University of Washington policies focus on specific behaviors and treatments, we, in the Office of the Title IX Coordinator, acknowledge that society and all institutions in it need to do more to address disparate impacts on specific groups. For example, people of color. Executive Order 31 prohibits discrimination and harassment based on each of the protected classes listed on this slide. Today, we'll be talking about discrimination related to the highlighted protected classes, which are sex, pregnancy status, sexual orientation, and gender identity or expression. Disparate treatment occurs when someone is treated differently because of some characteristic of that person, and the relevant characteristic makes the individual a member of a protected class. For example, if someone receives or does not receive a promotion because they are pregnant, that person has experienced disparate treatment. The relevant characteristic is that the individual is pregnant and pregnancy status is a protected class. Alternatively, maybe only men are called upon to demonstrate a professional skill or speak in class. Or maybe individuals of a specific group are asked to pick up coffee or clean the fridge in the lounge. I also want to highlight that disparate treatment may occur because of an individual's intersecting identities. For example, an Asian American woman is treated differently than an Asian American trans woman, and both may be treated differently than an Asian American woman who is deaf. The university prohibits any type of disparate treatment and can address any form of such differential treatment. Quid pro quo sexual harassment is a unique form of sex discrimination. Quid pro quo sexual harassment involves seeking a sexual act or relationship in exchange for favorable treatment, or if the individual does not acquiesce, then subjecting that individual to an adverse action, such as a poor performance evaluation or refusal to write a letter of recommendation for something like tenure. Some examples of this may be sleep with me and get tenure, or if you don't, you'll lose your job. For students, the example may be sleep with me and you get an A. If you don't, you'll fail the course. This type of harassment typically occurs when there is an actual or perceived power differential in the relationship. In order for another type of harassment, hostile environment sexual harassment, to be present, two conditions must be met. First, conduct must be unwelcome and based on an individual's sex, or the conduct must be of a sexual nature. The second condition depends on what definition is being used. In 2020, the Department of Education issued federal Title IX regulations that require schools to use a specific investigation and adjudication process when a specific definition of hostile environment sexual harassment is alleged. The University of Washington adopted this definition and simultaneously maintained its broader definition. The University of Washington considers hostile environment sexual harassment to occur when the unwanted sexual conduct is sufficiently severe or persistent or pervasive such that it alters the work or education environment. In other words, it creates a hostile environment. Additionally, the University of Washington created policies that use the narrower federal definition where we are required to do so. The federal regulations require that the conduct is so severe, persistent, and objectively offensive that it denies equal access to the work or educational environment. An example of how this makes a difference may be if an individual grabs a woman's breasts. Under the long-standing University of Washington definition, such conduct would likely be considered severe and constitute sexual harassment. Based on the federal regulations definition, this action likely would not constitute sexual harassment because it occurred only once. The University of Washington's policies are still in place and cover a broader range of behavior than the federal regulations require. At the University of Washington, we will continue to address this broader range of behaviors under our longstanding policies when the federal regulations do not apply. The unwanted and unwelcome sexual behavior does not need to occur in person. Electronic communication, such as that via Zoom, Facebook, or Snapchat, are as real as any other communication or interaction for the purpose of addressing sexual harassment. Our responsibilities around harassment are not geographically limited to the campus. If a behavior or series of behaviors impacts you in your program or education, wherever that is, whether it's a regional campus, in a clinic or internship, or via a Zoom classroom, the university is able to address the behavior. Whether the federal regulations apply is dependent on geography. Those details aren't as important right now. What is relevant for you to know is that the University of Washington will respond to and address all conduct, regardless of where it occurs. You may have noted that the second part of the definition for hostile environment sexual harassment are quite similar. The University of Washington's definition of hostile environment sexual harassment may apply to a spectrum of behavior. Under the University of Washington policy definition, hostile environment sexual harassment may occur when there is one unwelcome incident that is sufficiently severe, such as sexual assault, or where there are repeated, more minor incidents, like unwelcome and unwanted emails, comments, or jokes of a sexual nature. Under the federal regulation hostile environment sexual harassment definition, the sexual conduct must be severe and pervasive and objectively offensive. It's important to keep in mind that what is objectively offensive is different from what is subjectively offensive. An individual may find something offensive to them, but unless reasonable people will all agree that something is offensive, it won't be considered objectively offensive for the purpose of the federal regulations. Regardless of what happens, the University of Washington is able to address the conduct, including by providing support and resources to the person who experienced harassment or harm. And again, just to underscore, the sexual conduct that is unwanted can be verbal, nonverbal, physical, or online. This could include remarks about somebody's body, repeated attempts to tell sexual stories or jokes, being touched in a way that makes someone uncomfortable, or being asked out on dates repeatedly when that person has already been told no. And again, and it bears repeating, the University of Washington will address all behavior regardless of where it occurs. Again, any of our 3 campuses, any regional campus, any internship sites, in off-campus apartments, or in any type of study abroad program. Sexual violence has been prohibited for years by University of Washington policies. The 2020 Department of Education federal regulations also deem some forms of sexual violence as per se sexual harassment. This includes sexual assault, stalking, intimate partner violence, which may also be referred to as dating violence, domestic violence, or relationship violence. Retaliation is taking any action that is intended to harass, intimidate, or improperly influence any person who files a complaint, participates in an investigation, appears as a witness, or opposes an unlawful act or discriminatory practice or policy. Someone can be found responsible for retaliation even if the investigation does not find evidence for the conduct or actions that were originally alleged in the harassment complaint. Third parties can also be found responsible for retaliatory acts. Specific actions that may be retaliatory include any action that may dissuade a reasonable person from making or supporting a claim of discrimination, whether it's because of harassment toward that person, intimidation, threats, harm, or improperly influencing them, such as that which may occur if someone was coerced. Retaliation may also take forms such as treating or encouraging others to treat someone in a hostile manner because of their involvement in an investigation, or by emailing, texting, or ostracizing a person because of their involvement in an investigation or reporting discriminatory behavior. The University of Washington's Executive Order 54 prohibits certain types of relationships in which its employees may engage. Employees may not engage in a romantic relationship with a student that creates a conflict of interest or even that appears to create a conflict of interest. Additionally, an employee is exercising authority over a student with whom the employee has or has had a romantic relationship creates a conflict of interest. This is important for students to know should you find an employee asking you out or seeking a relationship with you. It's also important should you as a student become a teaching assistant or other type of academic student employee. Dating a student for whom you are a TA would violate this policy, even if the class is ended. It is possible that you may later serve as the same student's TA, which would violate the policy as well. The university has this policy for several reasons. It eliminates perceived favoritism. It deters later issues about what happens should the relationship end. It provides one person in a relationship from requesting or expecting more of the other person with less power. It also addresses potential issues of quid pro quo sexual harassment and that the person with less power may feel like they have to be in the relationship to avoid potential consequences. If a person enters a relationship purely to avoid consequences, or even in part to avoid consequences, or to gain some type of benefit, that person likely is not freely consenting to the relationship, but instead feeling coerced and engaging for the outcome of a relationship, whether it is positive or negative.
Now that we've covered university policies regarding sexual harassment and other sexual and gender-based violence, I'll discuss the resources and support options the university offers to individuals who have experienced harm. If you have experienced any of the behaviors we've been talking about and you're not sure what you want to do, confidential advocates are a good first contact. Washington law protects their confidentiality, so anything you share with them cannot be shared with others unless you provide permission or if very specific legal actions are taken, for example, a subpoena is issued. Advocates are available to students on all campuses and locations, and the UW PD advocate is available to employees on all campuses and locations. Advocates are available at no cost. In addition to confidential advocates, mental health and medical care providers are also confidential. Any communications with these providers are fully protected and can only be disclosed to another person with your permission or as permitted or required by law, such as if the provider learns of child or elder abuse, imminent harm to self or others, or pursuant to a court order. The Know Your Rights and Resources Guide is available through the university's Title IX Support and Help page. It contains contact information for all advocates and outlines many additional helpful resources. UW CareLink is available as an employee assistance program to help connect faculty and staff to therapists. I want to take a moment to talk about the work confidential advocates do. If you have experienced harm or unwanted sexual conduct, advocates can help to implement supportive measures that may help you remain in class or continue any employment you have with the university. Supportive measures may include safety planning, for example, considering the route you will take to class or work, or changing your social media settings, or requesting workplace or classroom accommodations, such as moving to a different course section so you don't have to encounter another person. Supportive measures may also involve helping you change your housing or office locations or obtain a court-ordered civil protection order. Advocates also are able to provide referrals to appropriate on and off-campus resources, such as mental health providers, legal advocacy, and additional supports. Advocates will inform you how to make a report to the police or a formal complaint to the university. They will help you explain your options. They will help explain your options to you and inform you of what the processes may be like. Advocates will not tell you what to do. They will share the available options and allow you to have the choices that make the most sense for you, given the options and where you are and what you have experienced. If you do decide to make a formal complaint or report to the police, confidential advocates are able to accompany you to any interviews, appointments, or hearings. In addition, advocates do not work only with individuals who have experienced harm or harassment. They'll also work with friends, peers, or colleagues of those who have experienced harm, as these third parties seek to support individuals who have experienced harm. Now that you know about some of what the confidential advocates do, I want to share what you can do when you learn that someone else has experienced sexual harassment, sexual assault, intimate partner violence, stalking, or other forms of sexual misconduct. Our goal at the university is to help the person who has been harmed get support and learn what their rights and options are so they can decide what next steps, if any, to take. We also have a responsibility to address and assess potential or ongoing harm to others in our community. The staff of SafeCampus, who receive training in threat assessment and response, work with our office to make those assessments. When you call SafeCampus, you may do so anonymously and or share limited information. For example, you won't have to share the name of someone who has experienced harm. SafeCampus is available to anyone in our community, as well as members of the public, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. SafeCampus staff will listen to anyone's concerns, and it strives to foster a safe and supportive UW community. When you call SafeCampus based on information someone has shared with you, it initiates what we call the UW Title IX protocol. Here's how it works. SafeCampus gathers whatever information the caller is able or willing to share so that it may conduct a safety assessment to identify and address any imminent safety concerns. SafeCampus staff will then send information about rights and resources to the person who has been harmed. If you're calling anonymously or don't want to share the name of the person who has experienced harm, SafeCampus staff will ask if you can pass on the information to the person. If you've shared the name of the person who's experienced harm, SafeCampus will contact a university advocate and ask them to directly reach out to that person. SafeCampus then also alerts our office, the Office of the Title IX Coordinator. This is because our office tracks patterns, assesses risk, and engages with campus partners to respond appropriately. SafeCampus will also provide support, coaching, and resources for the person who is calling. It's important to note that while SafeCampus does all of these things, there are certain things they will not do. SafeCampus will not contact the person who's alleged to have engaged in the harm and tell them about the report. SafeCampus will not initiate any type of investigation, and they will not impose any type of disciplinary action or attempt to impose any accountability. SafeCampus is different from the advocates in that as an office, they are private and discreet, but they do not have the same level of legal confidentiality that an advocate has. SafeCampus is also available 24 hours a day, whereas advocates are generally available during working hours. And SafeCampus is structured to provide short-term support, whereas advocates can work with folks over a longer period of time. Having introduced the Title IX protocol, we recognize that you may be receiving disclosures and information from individuals who have experienced harm. I want to take a moment to discuss how you might respond to them. If someone discloses to you, you may notice that their emotional reaction includes fear, anxiety, or depression. It's possible that person may be sharing that they feel guilt or self-blame for what has happened. They may be re-experiencing a previous trauma, and their beliefs about the world may be changing. They may also change how they respond to situations by avoiding them, and their physical health may decline. They may turn to alcohol and other drugs or increased use of those substances. If someone does share with you that they've been harassed or experienced harm, they likely trust you with the information they are disclosing. Some supportive ways to respond include things like the phrase, "Thank you for trusting me with this information." You might also want to tell them that you'll respect their privacy. You can say, "I want to be sure that you know how to get help and support, and do you mind if I contact SafeCampus so they can connect you with an advocate?" If they're okay with you sharing their name with SafeCampus so they can get direct support, then do so. But if they don't want you to share their name, assure them that you won't and that you'll pass along the resources, information that you receive from SafeCampus.
Lastly, I will cover some information about where and how to make a formal complaint. This is a very short summary of information, and more information is available on our website and the websites of the investigating offices. Anyone who has experienced sexual harassment or harm due to sexual or gender-based violence has the right to make a formal complaint, which is a written request requesting that the university conduct an investigation of sexual harassment. A good option is to speak with a confidential advocate first. This allows folks to discuss whether to request an investigation by university investigators, to request an investigation by the police, by both, or by neither. Folks then have the ability to consider and ask questions of the advocate about what steps they may wish to take so that they can make an informed choice. Making a formal complaint is one way to address behavior. Making a formal complaint could help the behavior to stop and ensure that additional people are not harmed. It could also be a way to hold the person accountable. All formal complaints must be submitted to either the Title IX Investigation Office or the University Complaint Investigation and Resolution Office, which is also called UCRO. Reports may be made to the police as well. You can contact the Office of the Title IX Coordinator, either myself or Valerie, at any time with any questions. As I just mentioned, the university's two offices that accept formal complaints are the University Complaint Investigation and Resolution Office, which investigates complaints about employees, and the Title IX Investigation Office, which investigates complaints about students. The investigators in these offices are trained to investigate complaints of sexual harassment and sexual violence. They do so with compassion and care for each of the individuals involved. The primary values of these offices are to conduct investigations that are neutral, fair, and impartial. The investigations focus on thoroughness over speed. If you wish to make a formal complaint, you will be asked to attend an intake meeting at which the investigation will determine whether or what university policies may have been violated. Based on what you share with them, the investigator will write allegations and seek your confirmation to ensure an accurate understanding of what you have alleged. Once the allegations are finalized, the person who has been accused of engaging in conduct that violates university policy will be notified in a letter that is called the initial notification. The investigator will then engage in a fact-finding process that includes gathering, analyzing, and assessing documents, what witnesses have shared during interviews, and any other information that is available. At the close of the investigation, whether there is a report or hearing will depend upon what university policy or policies were alleged to have been violated and whether the respondent is a student or employee. Sometimes investigations take a while, and this may occur because of breaks in the academic year, difficulty in obtaining documents, such as cell phone records or other things that require a third party to produce those to the party, or the time it takes to schedule all relevant witness interviews. So how can you help now? The good news is that awareness is increasing and people are becoming more informed about what is unacceptable behavior and also what is essential for an inclusive and safe working and learning environment. Further, more and more people are intervening in harmful behavior and demanding that it stop. We have a lot of work to do in the realm of gender equity and preventing gender and sex-based discrimination. There is a lot happening at the University of Washington, and you may become involved in helping. Please review both the Title IX and SafeCampus websites for education and involvement opportunities. Both websites will be updated as the year progresses, and we welcome partners in this work. Among opportunities this year is working with us as we seek community participation and input while we develop longer-term solutions to comply with the Department of Education's 2020 federal regulations. These regulations were issued in May, and we had until August to comply. Because of the pandemic, and because many folks were off during the summer or not engaged during the summer because of summer break, the university implemented interim solutions, and we will be assessing these over the course of the next year. You are welcome to contact us about any questions that you might have. Given that this presentation is recorded, we regret that we are not able to answer your questions live. On our website is a link to some frequently asked questions. If we receive the same questions from you and others who are watching our recorded presentations during this pandemic, we may amend these questions as well. In the interim, please take care, stay healthy, and again, welcome to the University of Washington community.